Tonight we meet the troubadour of the king, an artist who works in stained glass, a critic who reviews church services. Dr. Bill Larkin talks about the sacramental life, and Mike Gallagher previews the Academy Awards. Hello, I'm Sean Hughes Camp. Welcome to this edition of Reel to Reel. Monsignor Minor has the night off, so I'm doing the show solo with an interesting mix of people and topics. We'll meet two critics, one who reviews church services and the other the modern arts. We'll also meet two artists who work in very different mediums, stained glass and the theater. The thespian is the subject of our first story. He did Shakespeare for 6 years before channeling his energies into spreading the good news. The result was a production about the troubadour of the king.
I am the troubadour of the great king. Francis returned to San Damiano, happy and full of fervor, clothed in a hermit's garment. And he reassured the priest of the church with the same words that the bishop had addressed to him. Then he started back to the city, where he began to praise God loudly in the streets and public places. Come, let us sing to the Lord and shout with joy.
Throughout the centuries, the church has inspired artists to create great masterpieces. But not since the morality plays of medieval times have any great works of liturgical drama emerged.
I am the troubadour of the great king.
For the last 3 years, Leonardo de Philippis has devoted his training and skills in Shakespearean drama to create and perform Christian theater. Leonardo and his wife Patty formed their own theatrical company called St. Luke Productions. They write, produce, direct, and perform liturgical drama done in a classical style. Though they're based near Portland, Oregon, their shows have been seen by thousands in schools and churches around the country.
He laid hands on each of them and cured them. Demons departed from many, crying out as they did so, "You are the Son of God!" He rebuked them and did not allow them to speak because they knew he was the Messiah.
While studying English literature in college, Leonardo developed an interest in the performing arts. 6 years were spent polishing his talents at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego and other Shakespearean festivals. In 1980, he teamed up with Patty to put together a show about the Gospel of St. Luke. It started out as a 2-month experiment that turned into a vocation.
I always had a desire to do something a little more fulfilling, that would be a little more inspirational to people. And I saw a real lack within the church for good classical sacred drama. People are tired, I think, of the normal things that are being done artistically, and it's not inspirational, it's not ennobling to the individual. And therefore, I really feel that people want to return to an artistic form that gives them dignity and lifts them up.
Now, Master, you can dismiss your servant in peace. You have fulfilled your word. For my eyes have witnessed your saving deed displayed for all your peoples to see, a revealing light to the Gentiles, the glory of your people Israel.
I think our ministry is primarily to revive the oral tradition that is so rich within the church itself. You can witness the incarnation of the individual who is portrayed. So in a sense, it brings the word becomes flesh.
But woe to you, rich, for your consolation is now.
And I think the main thing that has helped to enhance the work that we're doing now is the word work, the emphasis on the words. They were meant to be heard and not read privately all the time. as has been our emphasis too much. We need to truly be what the gospel says, is to proclaim them.
His love is everlasting.
There has been a real break between artists and the church. And in a sense, that's why our church art in the last couple hundred years has been so poor, because we have lost a lot of our brothers and sisters. And so we would like very much to bring other artists into this type of work so that we could expand and grow and possibly do more beautiful things for God.
O Most High and glorious God, cast your light into the darkness of my heart. Give me right faith and certain hope and perfect.
The most recent project St. Luke Productions has undertaken is a one-hour video drama called St. Francis, Troubadour of God's Peace. This one-man teleplay commemorates the 800th anniversary of the saint's birth and was inspired by Leonardo's great admiration of the holy man.
I have always been attracted to him, always been a friend of his, and he's a person that we all love and admire because he had the courage and the strength to love God with all his heart and all his soul and all his mind and all his body. And I think that's why it's so moving to be able to perform his life. It's such an honor.
May you find every blessing you desire. May whatever you ask worthily be granted to you. Farewell, you my sons, in the fear of the Lord. May you remain in him always. Happy will they be who will persevere in the things they have begun.
Touring and performing are the only way Leonardo and Patty earn their living. No admission is charged for their performances. Their only income is whatever a church or school donates for their productions. Besides writing and touring, they do all their own bookings, mailings, and publicity, as well as all the technical work such as sound, lighting, and sets. Doing all the different facets of theater by themselves is a difficult job, but the rewards reach into every part of their lives.
It's been hard for me to not be doing other kinds of theater, but more and more I feel that this is more fulfilling for me. A lot of people expect us, when we come into their community, they expect us to be like Jesus or be like Francis. That's not such a bad thing, you know, because it puts that responsibility on you, and it challenges us to really try to live that way.
Francis, do you not see that my house is falling into ruin? Go and repair it for me. Trembling and amazed, Francis replied, "Gladly I will do so, O Lord."
If you would like more information about the Troubadour of the King or the other productions of Leonardo de Philippis, contact us here at Reel to Reel and we'll put you in touch. Stay tuned for Dr. Bill Larkin and arts review critic Mike Gallagher. Coming up in DABAR, we have some free advice from psychotherapist Dr. Bill Larkin, who talks about the healing powers of the sacraments. Then our own Mike Gallagher reveals his picks for tomorrow night's Academy Awards.
I was in Italy during the exposition of the Holy Shroud. Taken from the innermost chambers of the cathedral in Tourin, the Holy Shroud, believed to be the burial cloth of Christ, was placed in public view, almost close enough to touch. There certainly was enough expectation there, almost a fever pitch of expectation. It occurred to me that most of the people there must be Catholics, Catholics who believe that Christ is present in the Eucharist. I could only wonder what would happen at Mass, at the liturgy, if the same level of expectation were taken there. For those of us who believe that Christ is present in the Eucharist, we do not merely touch the burial cloth, we partake of the very body and life of Christ. That should be cause for great expectation. In my private practice as a Christian psychotherapist, I can seldom see all of the people who need my attention, and rarely ever precisely at the moment when they most need it. For some of my patients, I decided that I would tell them that I would be willing to see them in 90 days if they would do 3 things. First, go to confession. Second, pray the rosary daily for 90 days. And third, receive the Eucharist for 90 days. Each day, when you receive, place your suffering symbolically on the altar. The results were dramatic. People would call in telling me, well, I guess I don't need to see you. And the problems I have, well, I think I can handle them. I believe we would all do well to take more of our lives to the healing power of the sacraments.
Hello, I'm Mike Gallagher. That annual Rite of Spring, the Academy Awards presentation, takes place tomorrow night. It's a time of year when even those who never go to the movies suddenly develop a consuming interest in who gets what. It doesn't mean a thing, really, but why be snobbish? Let's join the fun and go out on a limb. 5 nominations for Best Picture are The Big Chill, The Dresser, The Right Stuff, Tender Mercies, and Terms of Endearment. I'm quite happy with 3 of these, The Dresser, The Right Stuff, and Tender Mercies, all of which were on my own Best 10 list, but I don't think much of the other 2. The Big Chill was supposedly about idealistic 60s radicals who had to come to terms with the cruel world after graduation. But what they did during the Revolution is never made clear. My guess is that they spent it at the movies. Terms of Endearment I like much better, but it was too manipulative, egging us on to laugh at its characters for 2/3 of the way, and then ringing in a Hollywood-style fatal illness to make us dissolve into tears for the finale. But it does its manipulating cleverly. Cleverly enough, I think, to carry off the Best Picture Oscar. My preference, however, is Tender Mercies, a fine, straightforward drama about a wayward man saved by the love of a good woman. For Best Director, the 5 choices are Peter Yates, The Dresser, Ingmar Bergman, Fanny and Alexander, Mike Nichols, Silkwood, Bruce Beresford, Tender Mercies, and James L. Brooks, Terms of Endearment. I think that it will be Brooks, mainly because I'm afraid it will be a Terms of Endearment night. My preference, however, is Beresford for Tender Mercies. As for Best Actor, the 5 are Tom Conti for his alcoholic Scotch poet and Reuben, Tom Courtenay for the eponymous hero of The Dresser, Albert Finney for the doddering but formidable old actor in The Dresser, Robert Duvall as the down-on-his-luck country western singer in Tender Mercies, and Michael Caine as the burnt-out professor in Educating Rita. All 5 nominations are good ones, but I prefer Duvall, and in fact, I think he's an odds-on favorite to get it. He's deserved an award before, time and time again, and he's never gotten one. Besides, he's the only American. So besides the sentimental advantage, he has the home court advantage as well. For Best Actress, I think Shirley MacLaine is going to get the nod over Terms of Endearment co-star Deborah Winger, as well as over Jane Alexander, Testament, Meryl Streep, Silkwood, and Julie Walters, Educating Rita. My preference, however, is Jane Alexander, but who saw Testament? The closest thing to a sure thing this year seems to be in the Best Supporting Actor category, with Jack Nicholson for his astronaut with all the wrong stuff in Terms of Endearment, and I'd go along with that. For Best Supporting Actress, I honestly haven't a clue as to who might win. But rather than Cher, Silkwood, Glenn Close, The Big Chill, Linda Hunt, The Year of Living Dangerously, and Amy Irving, Yentl, I'll just go along with my favorite, newcomer Alfie Woodard, for her role as a sharp-tongued maid in the otherwise unmemorable Cross Creek. So that's it now. I hope that you didn't take notes, and above all, that you won't be unkind enough to check out my prophecies tomorrow night. This is Mike Gallagher for Arts Review.
Then all I can do, and all I try to do in my column, is to give my impressions.
feelings would be created in glass that would change the room and would inspire to worship.
Coming up next, we meet a different type of critic. Clark Morphew is a Lutheran minister and the religion editor of the St. Paul, Minnesota Dispatch, who visits churches to review their services. After the experience of visiting over 100 churches, he has a pretty good idea of what makes a good or bad service. Then we'll meet Dieterich Spahn, an artist specializing in stained glass. His work decorates over 90 churches throughout the country.
The reaction has been better from lay people than it has from the clergy. And somebody once introduced me as the most feared man in St. Paul. And I don't think that that's true. But I do think that there are some pastors who fear me.
It is he who makes war to cease in all the world. He breaks the bow.
Preachers in St. Paul and Minneapolis, Minnesota may have a good reason to fear Clark Morphew. Part of his job as religion editor for the St. Paul Dispatch is to drop in, unannounced, at an area church to review a Sunday service, much like a theater critic might review a play. His impressions, sometimes favorable and sometimes critical, appear bi-weekly in his popular column, The Ways We Worship.
Well, you know, we've been doing this for 4 years, and so sometimes people recognize me, and then word will spread through the congregation that Morphew is there, and everybody better be on their best behavior, and they hope the pastor has a good sermon and so forth.
Clark had told me that someday he's going to come and review us, and I, of course, never knew exactly when that would happen. And one Sunday morning, I looked out there, and here I saw Clark Morphew. I was giving my announcements, and I knew it was too late to do anything else.
Pastor Roger Eigenfeld and his congregation at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church in Matamidi, Minnesota, got a rave review.
Well, the review came out, I guess, much better than I even thought it would be, and was very, very pleased, and got a whole bunch of newspapers put on my desk the following day from various members and community members who saw the article in the paper.
4 years ago, Morphew panned a service at Gloria Dei Lutheran Church in St. Paul. Although he wasn't preaching that day, Reverend Paul Peterson remembers the reaction of the congregation.
I don't think that we suffered as a result of it. And interestingly enough, a great many people who are former members who read that review came back to Gloria Dei the following Sundays to express their solidarity with us in the face of what they perceived to be an attack.
I do believe that Clark is making a valuable contribution to the community and to really the religious institutions throughout the city in making ourselves a little bit more accountable and letting people know also that there are some exciting things happening out there in the church.
After all, he came here once and saw our life together in one very skimpy sort of exposure, and had little exposure to what life is like in the congregation.
I don't think that any person can claim to be qualified to judge a worship service, particularly when they've only visited that church once. I just think that's impossible. But given the restraints we have, the time problem and all, we can only visit a congregation once. Then all I can do, and all I try to do in my column, is to give my impressions.
With 10 years' experience as a pastor himself, Morphew's criteria for a good service are really very simple.
I'm always looking for friendly congregations. If someone speaks to me, and it usually happens in charismatic or Pentecostal congregations, if somebody speaks to me, I'm thrilled to death. Usually Sunday morning is the loneliest hour of my week. I'm looking for a thoughtful sermon filled with stories, illustrations that come from life, that talks about life, gives me some answers as a parent, as a man, and I'm looking for a congregation that loves to sing hymns. And sometimes I find that and sometimes I don't.
Well, in 1945, at the end of the war, a lot of churches were destroyed in Germany. And out of that disaster and destruction, there was a lot of room to create new things. In other words, they built new churches and they built new cities. And stained glass underwent a drastic change from its traditional application. In other words, non-representational windows were created, abstract windows, if you like, which express a feeling, and rather than depicting a scene, a religious scene, feelings would be created in glass that would change the room and would inspire to worship.
The vibrant stained glass designs of German-born artist Dieterich Spahn adorn over 91 churches across the United States. Each window is not only a work of art, but is specifically designed to reflect the personality of the local church community.
I look at the building and the room and architectural style and denomination and basic, and also quite important, what the congregation feels, what they like. Behind me, these designs on the wall here, those were done for a church in southern Minnesota, which is primarily all farm community, and they received this real abstract and contemporary window. They said, we don't necessarily understand the abstract design, but we like what it does to us when we look at it. And I says, that's all it needs to do. You don't really need to look at a saint or at a holy face, because you got 2,000 years of holy faces all over the place, and you can look at those, and you don't need one in your church. You probably got them in your illustrated Bibles. And they accepted that, and it worked out just very gratifying for me and for them.
From his studio in suburban Minneapolis, Minnesota, Spahn gives the ancient art of religious stained glass a contemporary flair.
Stained glass is really, its real purpose today is to enhance the space of worship. It is not to interfere or compete with the setting or with the worship that is, or the celebration that is going on at the time. It's supposed to just enhance. People should feel comfortable in the room. Not comfortable like you wear a shoe, but comfortable. And it should enhance their spiritual well-being, if you like, in the place they're at. That's what architecture and stained glass does today, or religious art in general. It is not to shout at you, it is just to be of service to you.
Next week, we'll see some of the outstanding television and radio programming honored by Catholic broadcasters. We'll visit a school that teaches preaching, and a convent where candy is made. And Father Walt Nolan has answers to your questions about our faith. Monsignor Minor will be back with us here next week, so we'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Good night.
A lot of people expect us, when we come into their community, they expect us to be like Jesus or be like Francis. And that's not such a bad thing, you know, because it puts that responsibility on you, and it challenges us to really try to live that way.
Francis, do you not see that my house is falling into ruin? Go and repair it for me. Trembling and amazed, Francis replied, Gladly I will do so, O Lord.